Good morning, everybody. Good morning. It's March 5th, 2026. I'd like to call the business meeting of the Governing Board of the South Florida Water Management District to order. First on our agenda always is the Pledge of Allegiance, and Alligator Ron Bergeron is going to lead us. If you'd stand, face the flag. Thanks, Alligator Ron. Today, we're going to pause to recognize the life and service of Frank Sonny Williamson Jr. He passed away on February 18th this year. He was 96 years old. In 1991, Sonny was appointed to serve on the South Florida Water Management District Governing Board. He served for 8 years, and he had 2 years as chairman. He brought practical wisdom, steady leadership, and a deep respect for balancing environmental stewardship with the needs of Florida's working lands. He's a proud graduate of the University of Florida, and Sonny returned to Okeechobee after graduation to help build Williamson Cattle Company into a model of sustainable and environmentally responsible agriculture. In 2005, his ranch became the first east of the Mississippi to receive the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service and National Cattlemen's Beef Association's Environmental Stewardship Award. That's an achievement that reflected his lifelong commitment to conservation. Sonny's legacy is one of service to his family, to his community, and the natural resources of this state. And on behalf of the governing board and the district, we extend our heartfelt condolences to the Williamson family and express our gratitude for his enduring contributions. I'd also like to recognize a member of our staff from the Miami Field Station who passed away, Michael Wyant. He was a crane operator for us, and he worked for the district for 11 years. Started in Clewiston at the field station there as an excavator earth mover in 2015, and he worked on many important district projects for us, including the S27 bank repair and the L29 boat ramp repair. He was involved in many other projects as a crane operator for grate overhauls and pump overhauls. He was a dedicated employee and an asset to the Miami Field Station and the entire district, and he's going to be sorely missed. So if you join me, please, we're going to take a moment of silence for both Mr. Williamson and Mr. Wyant. Thanks. Mr. Steinley and Vice Chairman Wagner are not going to be able to join us today, and Mr. Martinez is participating remotely. Charlie, are you on?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. Thanks for being there. There is a bake sale and an arts and crafts sale going on this morning until noon, and there are some tempting treats for sale. You can pay with cash or check. Proceeds do go to the Employee Committee Fund to sponsor other events throughout the year. Also, from 1 to 3, district staff are holding an open house where members of the public have an opportunity to meet with staff and hear about the latest science and accomplishments that are highlighted in the 2026 South Florida Environmental Report, which came out a couple days ago. And thanks so much to staff for doing that. It's an incredible document, as it always is. If you couldn't attend yesterday's open house, I encourage you to go from 1 to 3 today. For those board members who are here, I'm going to ask that you make sure your microphone is on when you speak. For those board members who aren't here, Charlie, if you want to talk, just shout out, and I'll recognize you. Members of the public on Zoom who wish to address the board can use the raise your hand feature. If members of the public are having any trouble and need help, please go to the website sfwmd.gov and click the Ask Us button at the top of the page, and staff will help you. If you're using a phone and you'd like to comment, please press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute and unmute. As a courtesy to others who wish to speak, members of the public are asked to comment only once on a topic, and we'll take public comments first from those who are here in person and submitted a comment card, followed by those who raised your hands on Zoom. And now we're going to go to employee recognitions with Mr. Bartlett.
All right. Okay, so our March 2026 Employee of the Month is Kim Richer, Lead Scientist, Compliance Assessment and Reporting Section. So, did you know that March 1st happens every single year. And that on March 1st, every single year, we have to produce a report for the legislature and the governor that is mandated by state law, many permits, to inform the public of everything that is going on. Kim Richer is the hub of that report, and she has started next year's report already. I feel sure. Is that right, Kim? Yes. Okay. This report is gigantic. It is 2,544 pages long. Russian novels are not even that long. It is 689,514 words, 681 tables, 1,300 figures. This is our information, and it happens every single year. And Kim has done a lot of work to sort of streamline it, do some process improvements on it to make sure it gets produced in a better way this year, including redesigning the peer review process to really focus acutely on those parts that need to be peer reviewed to get that done, and also including a two-stage public review this time around, which enabled clear sequencing and more effective engagement between the public and the authors of the various sections. So these really strategic enhancements have helped Kim produce a better product, which, by the way, Volume 1, which is a lot of the science and engineering information, she personally edits front to back, Volume 1. Volume 2 is our financials. Volume 3 is our permitting reporting. And so it has all the information, and she's been able to make it happen this year in a better way than last year. And there isn't a week that goes by where I don't say, that's in the SFER, when I get that question. Because there's a lot there, and she makes it happen and makes it better every year, and that is why she is our March Employee of the Month. Kim, congratulations. All right. Our March 2026 Team of the Month is our Trash to Treasure Sale of District Property team. Javier Gonzalez, Karen Kempf, Tammy King, Aaron Pierce, and Falguli Shaw. Now, we all have stuff, right? And that stuff tends to accumulate. And I know in my house, I'm like, wow, I got to get to that closet sometime. This is the team that, in addition to their day job, actually pays attention to all of our stuff to make sure we don't accumulate that stuff. And that's why we call them our Trash to Treasure team, because one person's trash is another man's treasure. And this team is good at selling stuff. Really good at selling stuff. So it's not just surplus, it's trying to make money while surplusing. And they can do it all. They've sold scrap wiring, they've sold dump trucks, they've sold pipe. Whatever we have laying around that we don't need, they can figure out a way to sell it, which is through advertisement, auction, and sale. They deal with all the transactions, the payments, the taxes, the titles, the insurance, all the stuff, transport. They're their own Amazon, I would say. So they do a great job. And so last year alone, they raised $1 million for the district just trying to sell the stuff that we have. And that's real money. I need that money. That's good for help balance the budget. But they can see things that have no value and make money off of it, whether it's old, dusty, dirty, or dented, or even burnt to a crisp. Yes, even burnt. They will figure out a way to sell something off of that item and get us some extra revenue. And so they're always on it. They know how to do it. They're great to have around, and therefore we don't accumulate all that junk. Thank you. That's why you're our Team of the Month, March Team of the Month, selling our junk today. All right. So we're on to some special recognitions now. So we'd like always, every March, we like to recognize March as Procurement Month and really recognize the 22 professionals that we have in our procurement shop that really help the district go. Because there's not a single job in this agency that isn't dependent on procurement, right? If you've ever been in a big organization, everybody knows that phrase, procurement. And these folks do a fantastic job. They encumbered $1.6 billion in new contracts and purchase orders last year. That's 7,669 purchase orders, 150 new contracts, 15 new price agreements, 700 work orders, 88 new solicitations, 300 new firms certified as small business administrators, 495 new vendors were registered to do business with the district. 22 people did that. It's an amazing amount of work. And because of their practices, and they really think hard about saving the district's money. So through their competitive solicitations and contract negotiations, they saved this district last year $210 million. Real money for the taxpayers. And it really stretches us. We can do more because of this procurement shop. And that's why every March we want to bring them up there. We've got the certificate and get a picture with them because we're so proud of this procurement team. So congratulations, Procurement Month. All right. So we just closed out the Winter Olympics, and where all the athletes were recognized for their accomplishments of medals and provided their awards for the best athletes. And while the district isn't really recognized for our athletic prowess, although we just had a kickball tournament last weekend where some of it was on display, we are recognized out in the lobby for our science, right? And engineering. And so every year we take an active role in the Palm Beach Regional Science and Engineering Fair, where 500 students come together and present their projects and their projects. And so we send staff over there to look at it with respect to our expertise, and we choose 3 to recognize for the great work they did with their projects. And so we'd like to recognize those 3 students and have them and their families come up here for a picture while we present a certificate from the district for the great work they did with their project. And those 3 are Alyssa Coyle from A.D. Henderson School, Yvonne Shandalingam from the Spanish River High School, and Isaac Nelson, who is homeschooled. So the three of you and your families, come on up.
Well, Drew, thanks very much for that. The future certainly looks bright. Those are very interesting projects those guys are working on, and gals. We'll go now to item number 5 for agenda revisions. Molly, is there any agenda changes?
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. And we'll go to abstentions by board members. I'll see if anyone has an abstention. I'll start with Mr. Spotswood. Do you?
None.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron?
None.
I have none.
I have none.
None, sir.
Thanks.
I have none.
Thank you. And Mr. Martinez?
None.
Thank you. And now we're going to go to the Big Cypress Basin report with the chair of the Big Cypress Basin, Colonel Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Big Cypress Basin Board met on February 27, 2026. We opened the meeting by highlighting the completion of the Picayune Strand Restoration Project, a massive hydrological restoration of 55,000 acres. Several Basin Board members attended the ribbon-cutting event to mark this historic milestone in Everglades restoration. Next, we continued with a report by the Basin Administrator, Lisa Keeler, who provided an overview of several Basin capital projects. She noted that the communications tower is expected to be fully functional and online for the upcoming wet season. She provided the latest status on the Bird Rookery Boardwalk replacement, which remains on schedule for completion by the end of the year. Marshall Miller, Director of Collier County Roads, Bridge, and Stormwater Maintenance, provided an overview of the county's maintenance program of the secondary flood control system. He was followed by Peter Hayden from the county's Engineering and Capital Division, who provided an overview of key capital projects that are programmed to improve the system. Dan Walsh, the Basin Field Station Superintendent, presented an overview of the Canal Vegetation Management Program and provided an update on the Golden Gate Canal Vegetation Removal Project scheduled to begin next week. This project will remove vegetation along approximately 2 miles of the canal. We closed our meeting with technical and staff reports, and the next Basin Board meeting is Friday, April 24th, 2026 at 11 a.m. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair, subject to any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Thanks, Colonel.
Thank you.
We'll go now to the approval of the minutes for the February 12th, 2026 meeting. Does anyone have any changes to those minutes? If not, is there a motion? I have a motion. I have a second. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call that question. Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Really, thanks. And Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously, and we'll move to the Executive Director's report with Mr. Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reiterate, you walked in, you saw all the posters outside. That's from 1 to 3 today, so you can talk with our staff and learn about all the great work they do. So I'll start with the legislative session update. We really only have initial budget proposals in session right now. And on the Senate side, they proposed funding SERP at $514 million. And this follows the governor's request where he was asking for full funding for all the state-funded components for both the EAA Reservoir and SEP South. So they did, in their initial proposal, have full funding for both of those so that we can be sure to get them done and don't have to worry about future years. The Lower Kissimmee STA was funded at $100 million. The Northern Everglades program was funded at $79 million, which includes dispersed water management, Lake Hicpochee, and some of our projects. And then the Lake Okeechobee Watershed Restoration Plan was funded at $50 million. The initial House proposal was really just a base recurring budget, so it was similar to last year. Really, where we are in the process now is waiting for conference, what we call conference, where the leadership from the House and the Senate get together and make final budget decisions, and that's where really everything materializes. And right now, that would normally happen by Tuesday of next week, where they'd work together to get a budget. But based on where the legislature currently is in the process, most don't expect that to happen by Tuesday. It could, but I don't expect it to. But how much longer it takes is really anyone's guess. But really, all eyes are on that conference proceedings right now to see what happens at the end of the day. Just an update on the Southland project. Phillips did reach out and asked us for an extension to submit their project proposal in its full form. And so we granted that extension until June 27th, 2026. So we wait to hear from them. And the last thing I have is a water shortage update, which actually will be covered mostly in the technical reports today, where all the information. The warnings we issued are still in place for Collier, Glades, Highlands, Lee, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties, while we continue to monitor conditions, and we'll keep the public posted on that. We certainly encourage residents to use the simple tips to save water both inside and outside their house. And at this time, I'm not in the mindset of issuing any more water shortage restrictions while we monitor the rest of the dry season. And should we ever get into a position where another water shortage restriction would be necessary, we will focus on landscape irrigation, not indoor use, right? So it's really landscape irrigation was where we see the biggest benefit. We certainly encourage everyone out there to use their local ordinance restrictions. Those are conservation measures in and of themselves, whether it's 1 day a week, 2 days a week, or 3 days a week. It's all geographically based. So we certainly encourage everyone to understand what their water use guidelines are and irrigate accordingly. Actually, the last thing I have is the Army Corps of Engineers did launch an initiative since the last board meeting. It's called Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork. And Major Corey Bell will be here later today, and I'd like to recognize him to give an update and some more specifics on that initiative. But I think it's safe to say that we all very much appreciate this initiative as we work with the Corps of Engineers to accomplish great things. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks. We'll look forward to hearing from Major Bell when he does arrive. And if anyone has any questions or comments for Executive Director Bartlett, now's the time. Thanks. We'll now go to general public comment. If you're here to comment on a specific agenda item, we ask that you hold that comment until we reach that item on our agenda. I think there's only one. This comment period is for general comments not related to agenda items. Public comment on consent agenda items is item 13 on the agenda. The public has an opportunity to provide written comments prior to this meeting. We did not receive any comments. And we'll go now to general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll begin with Gil Smart, followed by Newton Cook.
Morning, Governing Board members. My name is Gil Smart. I'm Policy Director with Friends of the Everglades, founded in 1969 by Marjorie Snowman Douglas. We are headquartered in Stewart. Over the last couple of days, I spent some time with the SEFRA, the South Florida Environmental Report. It's an impressive document, and we appreciate the hard work and dedication of district staff who put it together. It tells an encouraging tale. But we were a little wary of the celebratory, even triumphal language which can be found in it. Talk of unprecedented success, restoration momentum. We read of the landmark agreement between the state and the feds, the new approach to restoration. All that's great. As I said last time, the district is on track to miss phosphorus pollution limits known as the QBEL. What happens then? The graphic on page 2194 tells us that every one of the 5 STAs saw annual flow-weighted mean outflow concentrations of total phosphorus increase in water year 2025. 4 of the 5 STAs were above, and in some cases well above, the one-time limit of 19 parts per billion. The SFER sort of glosses over this. It tells us that in water year 2025, the STAs treated 1.2 million acre-feet of water and removed 188 metric tons of phosphorus. That's good. But you'll recall the old line about how close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. The South Florida Environmental Report chronicles progress, but on the most important water quality metrics, that progress is falling short. Now, at the annual public meeting on the long-term plan for achieving water quality goals last month, we heard that STAs are mostly doing better in water year 2026, which is great, although that's at least in part due to historic low flows into the STAs. Keeping them wet has not been a priority this dry season, and it's likely that once the water returns, we'll see a surge in phosphorus outflows. Like I said, horseshoes and hand grenades, one step forward, one step back. These results underscore the need for a vastly expanded water storage and treatment areas in the Everglades agricultural areas. The STAs may be doing a good job removing phosphorus from the system, but it's increasingly apparent that we don't have enough of them. The QBEL is not some wish list, it's a legal mandate, and to meet it, much more needs to be done for the Everglades and for all of South Florida. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smart. Next, we'll hear from Newton Cook, followed by Ben Olson, who has his hand raised on Zoom.
Good morning, Newton Cook, United Waterfowlers. Couple things. We have a recreation meeting coming in March 23rd right in this room at 5 o'clock. And of course, everyone's invited. We usually have a pretty good crowd. And I like to tease Drew at each meeting when he's sitting there with me that look out there, you see we got more people here than you have at the governing board meetings, which is true. And we do. It's because we have a great group of stakeholders, an incredible group of stakeholders. The rumor is out that Dan Collard is retiring, and I can only tell you that years and years and years of working with Dan has just been a pleasure. And I think many people here remember Jerry Krentz, who retired some time ago. These people made what you see out there on the properties with the public access possible. And I've said it here 100 times before, there's thousands of people right now, as we've said here, on the district properties, hunting, fishing, camping, birding, hiking, and that is appreciated. And I notice we don't have people lined up here like we did some years ago, screaming and hollering about the yellow gates all being closed. So Dan had a big part of that, and he will be missed. On the other side of the picture, Lake O just made another big publication as the dirtiest lake in United States or North America. Lake O, Okeechobee, heart of the Everglades, the dirtiest lake in North America. Not in one publication, but now in another. How long are we going to let this go? How long are we going to go without even a management committee for Lake Okeechobee? There is none. The FWC has a meeting once a year. The last time I was here, they were talking about the sizes of the colloidal particles in the muck. Who cares? We need to get rid of the muck. I like to see the 3 meetings I've been asking for, one by the Corps, one by the district, one by the FWC, every 4 months. One topic. What is the condition of Lake Okeechobee today, and what are we doing to fix it? One of the problems, of course, is the aquatic plant spraying, and that goes from stem to stern in the state. I'm calling for a 50% reduction in aquatic plant budget, spraying budget. We have too much money and too many people enjoying too much money. And it's a growing monster, and we need to stop it. And I don't mean stop all spraying, we need it, but we need to cut
Please wrap
back
up
to the
your
essentials.
comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Next, we'll hear from Ben Olson, followed by Ryan Rossi.
I want to thank Newton for, he is the most persistent man that I've ever met. And public access, sustainable public access and enjoyment. We provide flood protection, we provide water supply, we're on the largest environmental restoration ever attempted in the history of the world. And having that sustainable access where people fall in love with the Everglades and want to protect it, whether you're a hiker, a biker, a wildlife photographer, a hunter, or a fisherman, that is so wonderful. I remember when it was approved for the bikes to go down the levees. And for a long time, no, it would damage the levee. Well, it doesn't damage the levee. You couldn't drive a nail in the levee with a 10-pound sledgehammer. But nevertheless, I do a lot of biking, and the compliments from the public of being able to go out there and ride their bikes, not hurt nothing. So thank you, Newton, because you're the most persistent person I've ever met. And I want to thank Drew and the staff for making sure we have sustainable access to the public in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Next, we'll hear from Ben Olson, followed by Ryan Rossi.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Okay. Good morning, Governing Board, Executive Director Bartlett and staff. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person today. At the February Governing Board meeting, while speaking about the water compact changes, Seminole attorney Michelle Diffenderfer stated that the Seminole tribe would be responding to the document I released during the first public comment that morning, WERP, the Seminole Western Everglades Housing Project. Ms. Diffenderfer stated that the tribe will take under consideration the allegations against Seminole leadership, and that they will be back with responses to water management at a future time so that you can understand the Seminole perspective on the matters. Ms. Diffenderfer also insinuated my allegations are against the tribe, which couldn't be further from the truth. These allegations are solely against named leadership personnel and non-tribal staffers. Now, I have briefly spoken with water management staff regarding the procedure here. It is my understanding that once you receive any responses from Seminole leadership and attorneys, they will be public knowledge. I'm hoping that I don't need to put in sunshine requests every week to obtain a copy if and when these responses are submitted, because for some time I've been trying to get answers to these questions and allegations raised 3 weeks ago. These allegations are very legitimate. I spent months investigating and documenting every facet I could find. I do hope that you've all had the time to review the research, because it is still incredibly alarming that a sovereign reservation was seemingly missed by every state and federal agency involved with work, which paves the way for really uncharted territory. McDaniels Ranch Reservation has the potential to not only impact WERP, but the Feeder Canal Basin Water Quality Program. As the Seminole Forestry request in that report shows, the tribe is monitoring the changes that, quote, the Everglades Restoration Project will have to produce a product for consumption, unquote, followed thereafter explaining that the tribe intends the inventory of the timber to provide for allowable cuts when markets become available. You pair that with the Bureau of Indian Affairs letters explicitly laying out the McDaniels Ranch Reservation was, at least initially, intended solely for housing, and it paints a clear picture that we're facing risk of thousands of acres of drainage from pristine, natural, original growth cypress stands that no one was accounting for in these project footprints. And again, as stated a few weeks ago, the sovereign transfer of McDaniels Ranch was the fastest non-adjacent tribal land transfer in U.S. history. About 15 months, whereas other Seminole land transfers took more than 8 years. It involved a very concerning business relationship between the chairman and a now former Hendry County commissioner, and then it was hidden from all agencies involved in the Everglades Restoration Project, as tribal staffers refer to it. Governing Board, I believe this is a simple ask. Please establish some method to inform members of the public if and when any responses come in to keep us from having to formally ask essentially every week. If it's already public knowledge when you receive it, then let's find a method of skipping the hassle so I don't have to bother staff every week. Water Management's been the only agency involved which has seemingly tried to resolve issues surrounding WERP, and I can't be more appreciative, but I fear we are just beginning to uncover what really went on behind the scenes. I know I sound like a broken record when I say this, but transparency is needed now more than ever if we are going to ensure proper restoration. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you consider my ask to simply inform the public when it comes in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Next, we'll hear from Ryan Rossi.
Hi, good morning. Ryan Rossi with the South Florida Water Coalition. Thank you, as always, for the opportunity to comment. I'd just like to briefly follow up on some comments I made at the last meeting regarding our current drought and the focus on water supply, which I've talked about now for many years. There's always the expectation, I think, that we look at future forecasts and hope that some rain will come and start turning the tide on these exceptionally dry conditions that we've been experiencing. Well, I think it turned out we did get some rain, but not nearly enough to serve as the remedy we need at this time. I hope that changes, but time will tell. I took a look at the report from the U.S. Drought Monitor this morning. Much of the middle of the state remains in extreme drought conditions, which includes surrounding areas to Lake O and many of our canals. And the majority of South Florida remains in severe drought status. Certainly, we're going to need a ton of consistent rain to turn this around. I've spoken with some folks who just are not optimistic with that, but I guess, as I said, we'll see. I would continue to encourage the district to put our water supply needs as a paramount concern at this time. We've got 7.5 million people that live in South Florida. I know that many of them are concerned about the situation. They're looking at the situation. We've been through several summers in a row now where that hasn't brought us the rain that we need. And I know that many others are concerned about that happening again as this year continues to unfold. So we simply cannot be in a situation every year, as I've said many times before, where we potentially need a tropical storm to fix some of these water supply issues. So please, I ask the board and I ask the district to please continue to prioritize water supply for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi. Mr. Chairman, we have no additional general public comment.
Thanks all for your comments. I appreciate it. We'll move now to board comment, and we'll start with you, Mr. Hurley.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple things. One, I also want to recognize Mr. Sonny Williamson and the volunteerism and what he gave to the South Florida Water Management District, and my condolences to his family. Mr. Sonny, who's always been a longtime family friend, he was an early adopter, and I think you mentioned that he was their ranch was recognized for environmental stewardship, one of the first ranches for that program. I think it was east of the Mississippi. But again, he was an early adopter. Long before BMPs, they were calculating nutrient loads on the ranch and finding innovative ways to balance. They were finding new ways to work with the communities. They had a partnership with OUA, recycling wastewater in their orange grove. He was, long before sod had much of a value, he was harvesting sod, pulled nutrients out, legacy nutrients out. And then the family was an early adopter of wetland conservation easements. And I consider the Williamson family, Williamson Cattle Company, a pioneer in all those things. And that was under the leadership of Mr. Sonny Williamson. So, moving on, in addition, had the Friends of Lake Istapoga met, and a couple of district staff, Matta Hall Ansar and Libby Pigman, were invited speakers at that Friends of Lake Istapoga. Their management committee had recently been disbanded, and it was pretty well attended. There were like 80 folks at this meeting. And I sat in the back of the room with one of the county commissioners and listened to everybody. And there's, of course, everybody's got different opinions on how to manage even Lake Istopoga. We hear it with Lake Okeechobee all the time. We don't always hear about Lake Istopoga. Lake Istopoga faces a lot of the same challenges that Lake Okeechobee does. There's concern on sediment buildup in the lake. There's concern on the regulation schedule. There is interest in seeing that regulation schedule evaluated. You know, the Corps does that periodically. So if it came time, we got to that point, I would support looking at that. The other speaker at that meeting was Nick Seasbo. Nick's with Agriculture, and they were fixing to fire back up again after a little hiatus on Lake Istopoga. It's one of the projects that we authorized. That's been 5 years ago now. We were in the Keys. It was May in the Keys. That's right. So that project is still going on, and Nick was giving an update to the local residents there, and that'll parlay into if you haven't had a chance, you know, we talk about it. We talk about the SFER, South Florida Environmental Report. The first chapter I go to is Chapter 8B. That's the one, and that's so far I've read it. And Miss Kim, I haven't found any mistakes. You did a great job in editing, but it's not like that SFER is not like it's a cookie cutter, cut and paste report. It's unique, and it's each year has its own uniquenesses. And so there is, you know, that tells me there's a lot of detail, a lot of initiative that goes into putting that report together. But within that report, you find the performance of some of these projects that we have authorized. And I encourage you to take some time. It's, you know, some of it can be easy reading, some of it's hard reading if you hadn't been there. But it is one of these days I'll get past Chapter 8. But anyways. Final thing I want to bring up, I mentioned it at the last meeting, but when we talk about Lake Okeechobee, projects within Lake Okeechobee, if you look at the district's NEAP report that got published this month, under the FDEP portion of it, they list the 6 innovative projects that they have authorized to be done in Lake Okeechobee while we're seeing some lower lake levels. And a lot of neat things. Again, it's all pay for performance stuff, but hopefully hopefully all 6 of these projects work and we begin to make a difference on the sediment levels in Lake Okeechobee. But I want to thank DEP for working to get that done while we have the opportunities. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Butler. Go on, Roman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ben, that jumped out at me too. I complimented the staff about that report. It was DEP's portion, but it was great to see all 6 projects highlighted on a map and explained. I know that when we hear about them as eaches, right, it gets a little confusing, but it was great to see that deployed on a map and each one explained. So I agree. That was some good information. Yesterday afternoon, I had a chance to spend some time with our staff and our scientists at the poster session for the South Florida Environmental Report. And one of the things that jumped out at me after some of us being on this board for 7 years is the fact that some of the research projects that were in their infancy a few years ago are now coming to the point where we have actionable science as a board. And the Cassandra and her team and Leroy and the whole team out there have some recommendations probably going forward of where we can actually make some decisions so that we can improve operations and, for example, maintenance of the STAs. They did considerable research in terms of prescribed burns and what that does and how much residual phosphorus the ash maintains and what we can do to improve some of those performance factors. So, I mean, I really got into it. I was here and I was having fun, and thank you, Cassandra, thank you, Leroy, and thank you, Stuart, and everyone else that I talked to. But I think that the takeaway for me was that research is paying benefits, and we're at the point now where some of these research efforts are getting to the point where we can make policy decisions and move forward on some of these actions. Also, I think that a highlight of the report and something that is explained on a poster as well is Everglades restoration is working. That's an addition to this year's report, where you know how we talk about, is Everglades restoration working? Yeah, it's working. Well, the blue is getting further down and it's more blue, right? Well, they've started to approach it in terms of how to quantify it, and how to quantify it by some of the research projects. So that was also very interesting to me. And they used as the first two examples the Biscayne Bay coastal wetlands and the Picayune Strand Restoration Project. So thanks a lot to everyone who I interacted with yesterday, and I'm so proud to be associated with such an incredible team of scientists and technicians, and I mean we're a deep bench. I got to tell you that it's really a deep bench with the talent that we have working for the district. So thank you for your time that you spent. One of the things that I've talked to Jennifer Reynolds and Ray Palmer about is the Caloosahatchee watershed when it comes to dispersed water management projects. One of the things that jumped out at me was the poster of all of our dispersed water management projects, and they were all deployed on a map. And there's a lot of room for improvement in the Caloosahatchee watershed. So that's kind of a shout out to our public-private partnership community to say, hey, if you've got some land in the Caloosahatchee watershed and you want to reach out to the district and see if we can put something together, that this is your opportunity. Because when you'll look at that poster, you'll notice that watershed has a lot of room for improvement. And so I'd like to see that move forward. And my last item that I have is a shout out to Jill Creech and the regulatory team. You know, I hesitate with giving the regulatory team a shout out, but I've had more than one unsolicited comments made to me in social settings about the outstanding service the Fort Myers regulatory team is providing. Now, and there's got to be something right going on for that to occur. You know, I'm not out there fishing for compliments, okay, and looking for things to have. These are people coming up to me and just saying, oh, by the way, boy, did we have a positive experience with working with regulations and regulatory team there at the Fort Myers office. So Jill, for you and your team and for that office, a big thank you. You're representing the district extremely well. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councilwoman. Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank our staff. I'm just overwhelmed every meeting and the amount of talent that we have in this organization that can carry the mission as all of the board members sitting here, and our vision and your leadership, Drew. It just amazes me, you know, especially with the largest environmental restoration ever attempted in the history of the world, and the largest drainage district in the world, and the future for 10 million people that live in South Florida. So I want to thank our staff. I want to thank you personally, Drew, for your leadership, and John as well. We couldn't do it with this team. I do want to thank the governor, and I want to thank the legislators for providing funding for these critical projects that are being started and completed. And I like the Picayune Strand on your side, Colonel. So proud of your leadership. And I try to sit up here and listen to all my fellow board members in their geographical area. And it's just quite an honor for me. I want to say that Tamiami Trail, I want to thank Drew and your whole staff. And I don't know whether y'all have seen the critical path that's put together to move water south. And we have these Zoom meetings every month or two with 4 federal agencies and 4 state agencies, removing the barriers that are stopping water from moving south, because that's all I hear every meeting. And sometimes I repeat these things because I feel like there's certain stakeholders that could be listening to this or hear that need to know what we're doing. I know my fellow board members hear it all the time, but we're moving very fast on the Tamiami Trail. I had a conversation with DOT. They've agreed to let us leave the L29 at 8.5 year-round. We were restricted to 120 days, and I think we were allowed to get 1 extension. That's gonna move a lot of water south. And that's because the road will be completed and it's elevated now that we can keep the L29 at 8.5 year-round. We don't need it now because we're in a drought, but you know the high water impacts to the Central Everglades and the Miccosukee that's been going on for decades. This is gonna start minimizing that right away. So I wanna thank the whole team, our partners, the Corps, Department of Interior, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Park Service, the DEP, the FWC, South Florida Water Management, and for continuing to make sure we get this water equalized across that global system onto Florida Bay. And I know our team is working on the remodeling west of the L28 across the Tamiami Trail and Loop Road to allow that water to flow. We're moving forward with the 3 culverts in the L28. Allows this water to flow by gravity. And as we continue to go forward, we gotta let this water go by gravity as much as we can do. Model the natural flow by gravity, not continuing to shut gates, open gates, and move water from the east side to the west side. And I'm so excited because I can see for the first time in 110 years that we're very close to making that connection. And that will benefit the whole global system. It'll benefit the Central Everglades, Big Cypress, Picayune, Panther Refuge, Fakahatchee. And the other thing it does is that 2.5 million to 3 million acre feet that we started to reestablish 25 years ago is not going out our rivers in quantities greater than natural. This is a big step, and the biggest benefit we're about to see very shortly, moving the Blue Shanty forward with our team and working with our federal partners, is the last little piece of letting this water flow by gravity across this global system. 60% to 70 on the east side of Shark River Slough, 30 to 40 on the west side, and quit shutting gates and have a more natural system. So, sorry I get so long-winded on this, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I don't think it's a train. And I do want to thank our team on the Western Everglades. Very critical that at the end of the day that we restore, whether it's private Everglades, public Everglades, tribal Everglades, and boy, they have put together models and to make sure that we are restoring, not destroying. And I'm really proud of our team. We had a meeting this past week, and we're gonna make sure at the end of the day that we're truly restoring the Everglades. And I do wanna compliment Ben Olson, the young man that you hear a lot from. I don't know whether you looked at his report. He went back 100 years and put together science, it's just amazing. And he's the next generation. Sometimes he can get long-winded like me, but I will tell you, I'm really proud of these young people. And I hope all my fellow board members have read that report. It's very interesting. His family has lived out there for over 100 years. So I'm really proud of this future generation. I apologize for talking so much, but you give a redneck cowboy a microphone, he just don't know when to shut up. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and God bless and long live the Everglades.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Spotswood.
Nothing from me, Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Martinez.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Ron, for your comments. You never have to apologize for saying what's on your mind. So 7 years ago, this month is our anniversary for some of us on the governing board, and I just want to express my appreciation and respect for my fellow governing board members and my colleagues here. And thank you all for your curiosity and professionalism and collaboration and hard work. We, along with the executive director, help set the tone for the staff here and the organization, and I just want to thank you for all you do. And I look back on these last 7 years, and it's just amazing what's been accomplished with Governor DeSantis' leadership and the legislature support and support of our congressional delegation and the relationships we have with our partner organizations, whether it's the Corps or Interior or DEP or FDAX or FWC. It's really been a great working relationship, and most of all, I want to thank our staff. None of this would have happened, obviously, without you, and you all amaze me, and I think all of the board every single day. So thanks, and keep it up. And speaking of staff, Charlotte mentioned the SFER, and Ben did as well, and that document is amazing to me. And if it's not in there, you probably don't need to know it. I mean, it's just that is the most inclusive document I've ever seen. So look there first and then ask, because that is really a brilliant document. I want to thank staff for pulling that one together. We'll move now to consent agenda. Is there any board member who wants to move any of the consent to a discussion? Is there any public comment on consent?
There are none, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks. Is there a motion?
I'll move, Mr. Chair, that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Thanks. I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Okay. With no discussion, I'll call the question. Mr. Spotswood?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Colonel Roman?
Yes?
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
And Ms. Martinez?
Yes.
Thanks. That passes unanimously. We will go now to discussion, which is the C-43 operations and maintenance with approval of the embankment, slope, and grounds maintenance service contract. Mr. Mitnick.
All right. Morning, governing board members. It's been a while since I stood up here and gave a presentation, but I'm here to present item 26. So just in case everybody forgot, C-43 Reservoir is located here in Hendry County, roughly halfway between Lake Okeechobee and the estuary, just west of the city of LaBelle. In total, it consists about 10,000 acres, has about 19 miles of dam around the entire facility, 450 piezometers, which are essentially just monitoring wells, both inside the dam and around the exterior of the dam itself, 3 pump stations, and a number of water control structures, both within the dam itself as well as the perimeter canal that surrounds the project. So, as you can imagine, this is or actually don't imagine it, this is the fact, this is the first reservoir that'll coming into our inventory. And anytime you bring a large civil works project like this into your inventory, there's a number of guidelines and requirements come with that. There's the usual industry standards that you have to pay attention to, but given that this is a civil works project and the Corps of Engineers is involved, far be it from them not promulgate a bunch of engineering regulations on how to take care of a reservoir and a dam and things that you need to start paying attention to, that we will need to start paying attention to. So there's a number of different regulations that we've got to start following. I'll just draw your attention to this one down here at the bottom, which will be the subject of the resolution towards the end of this presentation for the board's consideration. But just the landscaping and vegetation management of the dam itself and its surrounding facilities. But before that, there's a bunch of other things that goes into bringing this type of facility online and bringing it fully operational. Just from a canal management standpoint, there are 16 miles of canals around the project. We've got to inspect those canals every year, make sure. I mean, the board has heard a lot of comments about invasive exotic vegetation in the lakes and streams around the district, but that is no different than the perimeter canal, and we've got to manage that for aquatic vegetation because it serves as part of the seepage management system for the overall project. So it has got to be free and clear of invasive exotics and other types of vegetation that would clog it up and hinder it from doing its intended purpose. So there's that aspect of the facility. Then of course, I mentioned there are 450 monitoring wells or piezometers. Those are very key and critical, and you probably can't really see it, but you slightly hear it in this video. This is one of the outlet structures of 45 miles of internal drainage pipe that is within the dam itself. It's perforated pipe to collect that seepage as it comes through the dam and have a controlled outlet that we can manage and make sure that that water exits the dam safely and doesn't cause buildup of pressure underneath the dam and underneath the soil cement that surrounds the interior face of the dam. So as you can imagine, anybody who has those perforated pipes maybe around your pool to collect rainwater or a downspout on the side of your house from your gutters, those perforations tend to clog up over time. So that's something that we've got to stay on top of and continually monitor these outlets to make sure that they are flowing water like you briefly saw in that video. I know it was hard to see, but you see a little bit of water kind of trickling out. We always want to make sure that those are functioning correctly, and those 450 piezometers help us measure that. And they measure the buildup of the pressure inside the dam. All of that information comes back to this building through our supervisory control and data acquisition, our SCADA network. So we gather all that information, we analyze it, and we monitor it on a routine basis. And of course, I said there's 3 pump stations around the project. Pump stations aren't new to us. We have a number of pump stations in our inventory, so we know what it takes to operate a pump station and all the support activities and going into ensuring the engines, the pumps, and all the ancillary equipment are ready once the rain hits and you want to go turn them on and capture all that water and pull it into the reservoir. So that's nothing new to us, along with the trash rate components. What is maybe slightly new on this scale at least, C43 as well as the C44 inflow pump station for both of those reservoirs. Those are electric driven pumps. We have a number of electric pumps in our inventory already, but these 2 stations are among the largest that we'll have in our inventory. So anytime you flip on that pump, it is a sizable electric bill that gets triggered to be able to operate those stations and pull that water for the protection of the estuary and filling up the reservoir. In addition, this facility, the C43, has a unique feature to us that is not yet in our inventory that is coming online with this reservoir. That's an alum treatment facility. So it was designed specifically to, as a water quality feature associated with the reservoir, to inject alum in the discharge side of the pump station as it moves into the reservoir, so that the reservoir itself doesn't become just a big pool of algae sitting there. That when it comes time to deliver some of those flows for the restoration of the Caloosahatchee estuary, that we're not just delivering a big slug of algae-laden water coming out of the reservoir, and it's then a source of more problems for the estuary itself. So that's something new associated with this project. So there are a learning curve for our operators as we start to operate that alum facility and when we move water into the reservoir. Touched on the structures. There's 5 major structures within the dam, as well as a number of structures in the perimeter canal Again, that's nothing new to the field station staff on how to manage those structures and keep them in good working order. We inspect them both above ground and below ground every 12 months. All of our structures in the entire inventory throughout the agency are on a 5-year cycle, but because this is a critical high hazard dam, then we will be inspecting each of those structures on an annual basis to ensure that they're in good working order. For the embankment, as you can imagine, and you probably saw some of it on your different field visits to the site, there was a lot of survey activity during the construction work and making sure the dam was constructed as it was designed. That doesn't stop. Once we bring the facility online and move into operations, there will be periodic surveys. So think of even just your house. Anybody who has a house that is a couple decades old, there's differential settlement in your foundation of your house. A dam of this size goes through the exact same process. And we accounted for that in the design, and we expect it to sink down a little bit as time goes on and the weight of the earth compresses the earth below it. So we conduct alignment surveys on a frequent basis to measure that settlement in the dam, because if one portion settles more than another portion, then you wind up with cracks in this soil cement that will pose problems for dam integrity and the safety of the dam itself. So we stay on top of that. We monitor it, all 300 acres of the soil cement that is inside the reservoir. In addition, you probably didn't see it earlier last summer when you were out there. Right here is the location of where that event took place, but there's a wave wall that goes around the entire reservoir itself. And just think of anytime you've been at the beach and you see waves crashing against the beach, they sort of run up the beach until they run out of energy and start receding back. Wave wall serves a similar function. During storm events, waves will crash against the interior face of the reservoir, run up the reservoir, and so there's this wave wall at the top of it to prevent that water from keep on going, and overwash is what we call it, washing over the top of the dam and running down the back side. One of the reasons why we put the wave wall is, one, just for the protection of the outside face, but also by having a wave wall allows you to reduce the height of the dam, which then in turn translates to saving a bunch of money and not having to build the dam higher and all that added expense of the dirt and everything else that goes inside the dam. But with that wave wall on top, we do live in South Florida. There are thunderstorms throughout the year and throughout the summer. And this picture is a little small on the slide, but hopefully it gives you a feel for what happens when lightning interacts with concrete. So this is an actual lightning strike on the top of that wave wall, and the concrete just explodes whenever lightning hits it. So we've got to stay on top of that and repair those damaged areas. After every rainy season, we go out and do an inspection. So that's something else that we've got to pay attention to with bringing the facility online. So now maybe getting more to the heart of what this resolution is and this agenda item is. So there's close to just shy of 7,000 acres of sod or grass at the facility itself. That's between the embankment, the canals, and the surrounding grounds around the reservoir. And that one guideline that I pointed you to in the beginning of the presentation, there's standards on how you want to maintain that sod. It is not, so for the last couple months, anybody looking at their yards in South Florida has probably been a little brown, a little crispy, with the exception of potentially last weekend, maybe getting a little bit greener, depending on where you live. But we can't have that happen to the grass on the dam. If that grass starts dying, then once the wet season starts, it leaves those bare patches that are more subject to erosion. And you don't want the outside face of the dam to erosion, because that's one of the ways that a dam fails. So there's a lot of care and effort that goes into the oversight of that grass, to the extent of we even have a water truck that is going to have to do some of the watering of the grass itself. And keeping eye on the weeds that may grow within the grass and on the dam face itself, because again, those weeds die, it leaves those bare spots that are more prone to erosion itself. So one of the things that we're doing, and is one of the things that is specified in those guidelines, is we'll actually be working with an agronomist, have divided up the dam into 10 different zones. Using aerial imagery, we'll monitor those zones for grass cover and grass extent to make sure it is healthy. We'll do soil samples as needed in those 10 different zones to measure the health of the grass and the coverage of the grass, and make sure that the root zone is deep enough to provide a healthy cover, but not too deep as to lend itself to differential pathways for the seepage coming out of the dam. But this will just give you an idea of the types of grounds maintenance that we'll have to do, from the slopes on the canals itself to the dam face, as well as just around the different structures, and maintaining all of that sod and all of that grass. And with that, you can imagine there is a cost associated with all of that oversight and bringing one of these facilities online. So from managing the seepage management system to just the pump station operations, as well as the telemetry of all of those piezometers and all of that data gathering instruments, bringing all of that information back to this building so it can be analyzed and evaluated. This will give you a rough idea of the anticipated or potential annual recurring costs once the facility is fully operational and we've gone through the initial fill. And a lot of that starts with the initial fill. So this agenda item is really the first in what may be a series of contracts that the district and its staff will have to enter into to be able to ensure that this continues to be a safe and functional operating facility serving the taxpayers of South Florida. And with that, Mr. Chair, a resolution for the board's consideration.
Thanks, Molly. Do you have any questions on this one?
I have.
Yes.
Hang on. Public, I'm sorry.
Oh,
We do have a public comment.
We'll
We'll
have
hear
public
from
first.
Caitlin Newcamp.
Good morning, Chair and Governing Board members. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. Caitlin Newcamp with Audubon, Florida. Thank you, John, for the helpful and informative presentation. So we appreciate the opportunity to comment on the C43 reservoir item. While we understand the district's responsibility to maintain embankment integrity and eliminate woody vegetation that could threaten stability, we urge the board to consider whether this approach represents the best ecological and economic outcome. The need to prevent woody growth should not preclude the use of low-growing native ground covers that support pollinators and birds while maintaining stability. Investing millions of dollars in maintaining turf grass represents a missed opportunity to enhance biodiversity and demonstrate environmental leadership on district lands. Native alternatives like porterweed, sunshine mimosa, or sand cordgrass could reduce long-term mowing costs while providing meaningful habitat value on these areas. We recognize that portions of the embankment may already be planted in turf grass, limiting near-term flexibility. However, we believe it is important to acknowledge the lost ecological opportunity and consider other approaches moving forward. Even incremental shifts toward native ground cover could yield cost savings and environmental benefits over time, especially at this time as we deal with the drought. Although this item focuses on ground maintenance and vegetation management, we would also like to reiterate our ongoing concerns regarding nutrient concentrations within the reservoir. The alum treatment strategy primarily addresses phosphorus, so we encourage the district to continue research into effective nitrogen removal strategies at the BOMA facility in coordination with Lee County. Thank you for your continued commitment to Everglades restoration and responsible water management. Audubon, Florida looks forward to continued collaboration with the district to ensure projects maximize ecological benefits for the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newcamp. Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised on Zoom and no additional public comment cards.
Thanks for that comment. Mr. Bergeron.
well, this is a great project to minimize discharges greater and natural out to Caloosahatchee, and also water supply for as well. How much of the water are you estimating that would move south through the Everglades out of this reservoir?
So the way this reservoir functions, all of its discharge water will move to the Caloosahatchee estuary for the maintenance of the Caloosahatchee, especially during the dry times, and maintaining those flows. By doing that, there will be a commensurate offset, so to speak, for water back in Lake Okeechobee that then could be promoted south for the Everglades.
Now, how deep is this seepage wall?
Seepage wall extends down to about 45 or 60 feet.
That helps keep the water in the reservoir.
Correct, and if you were out there during construction, you already saw it was doing a pretty good job of that. Is there a fair amount of water last wet season sitting inside just on the ground that had to then be managed to facilitate the construction?
So that wall is similar to what we did down in the
Yes.
8.5 square mile area?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great project. Thank you.
Mr. Spotswood. Thanks, John. Any indication of, you mentioned other contracts and other need for the annual maintenance of this thing? Do we know what the magnitude of the annual cost of maintaining this C-43 reservoir is going to be?
Right now, these are the rough numbers that we have for that forecasted annual cost.
So this includes the other contracts aside from the one we're looking at today that
Yes,
you were
sir.
referencing? Okay,
Yes.
understood. To Caitlin's comment, what level of investigation are we doing into alternatives, native alternatives to turf grass? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure, we are aware that there's a number of different research efforts. I think some of them are even borne out by the Corps of Engineers through their research arm, so to speak. And of looking at different grass types and grass covers so we can move away from Bahia grass and then maybe into something else. And of course, as with everything that we do, as that knowledge comes online, we will certainly avail ourselves of it out into the future and look to reduce some of these kinds of costs by moving to better technologies.
Awesome. Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is there a way for us to use some of the area here to research that? But that's already ongoing, so we'll integrate that knowledge as we move forward. Interior, and there's a lot of mangroves where I'm from, but from where I'm from, shoreline stabilization, carbon sequestration, there's a lot of benefits. Has there been any thought about planting on the inside of the embankment wall to create some more native habitat and natural shore break?
So it's not really I was hoping there was a better picture. It's not really a good picture here, but you can just barely see it down here. In other projects, we have talked about those kinds of things. The issue that we run into, as you can imagine, is it will only be there for a short period of time when the reservoir is low. But as the reservoir fills up, then in this particular case for the C-43, it'll be under 10 feet of water plus. So a lot of that stuff isn't going to grow, and then you're up into the soil cement. So where we do look for those kinds of things, see if I can find it. There is on the perimeter canals, and we have incorporated that into our other portions of our canals throughout the rest of the system, not necessarily associated with this project, but I guess what I would say is once we get this facility fully operational and we've gone through that testing phase, then we could look for those kinds of opportunities out here in the perimeter canal to have some littoral type zones. I know inside the reservoir there's refugia for fish and wildlife in there, but those are at low levels. It obviously won't facilitate vegetation growth when it's full. But we do look for that in a lot of our different kinds of projects. And once we get through the testing phase, we'll look to incorporate some of those things here.
Thank you, John.
Colonel Roman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things, Mr. Spotswood, that the basin undertook was to do some tests with various ground covers on the banks of canals, and we did it in partnership with the Naples Botanical Garden. And they tested several different plots of ground covers, and to my dismay, none of them really performed as well as sod. And the district has done some research in this regard as well. And Ms. Newcamp and I have had these conversations. I wish there was a magic a ground cover that could replace this and be more natural. But so far, with our investigation, there hasn't been anything that can really perform as well as sod for these reservoirs. Maybe there will be in the future. Somebody will come up with it. John, what's the roll-up amount? How much does it cost us to operate and maintain the reservoirs? Is it $12 million a year?
So it's gonna be 15, based on your numbers
Yeah,
there.
so if you do
Yeah, I
the quick
took the
math on all of
lower.
this, it should get you in the range of, our forecast right now is between 10 and 12.
Okay, 10 and 12. All right, thank you.
That's with mowing?
Yes, sir.
And that's with mowing, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Guess I'm looking at the high number. I've been trained well.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Butler.
if I could jump right in on that. Over the last couple of years, since we first envisioned the C-43 and ran a budget then, what kind of increases in cost of operation have we seen? Inflationary type increases from the initial estimates?
So every year, as we go through and develop the district's annual budget, we have something called new works. And it is exactly as what you might think it is for all those new works like C-43, C-44, A2, STA, when they start coming online, what is that forecast of those kinds of expenses? So if you go back in time and you look at the projection of those new works, that has absolutely increased for those economic factors, inflation, just the price of materials and services. I don't have off the top of my head an order of magnitude it has increased, but it has been increasing consistently year over year.
Increasing above expected inflationary
Correct.
increases. Not the mowing contract, but you brought it up, the energy side of things for operating this. We've had the initiative of converting over from diesel, and we've used natural gas as some conversions, but using electricity in this case.
Correct.
Cost analysis, again, why the move from diesel to electric?
So we go through early on in the design process. There's actually a whole technical memo that we make our designers prepare to evaluate those different options, whether it's just a diesel pump station, a combined fuel, gas and diesel, or electric, or various combinations of thereof. One of the critical points in that conversation is the facility flood control? If it's flood control and needed to maintain flood control, then we're going towards the combined fuel, because you can't have a power outage. And the size of a generator facility that you would need to power this size electric pumps is almost bigger than if you just had a diesel engine sitting there. So we go through that analysis. And in this case, the C-43 reservoir is not connected to the flood control. I mean, it's connected, but it is not a primary link in the flood control system, because it's an offline reservoir and you still have the ability to maintain flood control by going down the river. So that's what drove this, as well as C-44, because it's a similar situation there, to go electric stations.
Long-term maintenance on diesel versus electric?
The electric stations that we have had in our inventory up until maybe 2-3 years ago have been on small. I mean, this pump station is 1500 CFS, C-44 is 1100 cubic feet per second. So these are the two stations. The closest one is the L8 FEB, just west of here, which is a 300 CFS pump station. Lakeside Ranch, I think, is 450, 650, right in that neighborhood. But it is a different animal taking care of that voltage size for the motor. And we've had to have our staff take additional training on being able how to manage those electric motors.
Okay. One final question, if I could, Mr. Chair. Kind of back towards this contract, and Robert and Colonel Roman kind of got into it. From, you know, and Caitlin had the comments of moving to more natural, but what about what's from? Let's go the other way. What about like AstroTurf or concreting the outside of the embankments, or whatever, or getting rid of that impervious surface? What's the considerations there that would limit the maintenance? I would maybe think.
So we have looked at concrete, but I'm sure that will generate other public comments about a big concrete dam up and over solid concrete. But with concrete, it is a proven method in other applications, but it's just a cost driver. To be able to construct that amount of concrete on both sides of the dam and have roller compacted concrete on either side. So that's what typically drives you to the turf on the outside of the embankment, and then just controlling the overwash and managing that turf, because doing concrete over both sides is just a cost driver. You'll see the separator dam. I don't have a picture of it in the presentation, but the separator dam in between the two cells, it's concrete on both sides for that reason, because it's got to be able to handle water on each side of it. AstroTurf, we early on in the mid-2000s, when we first started the Accelerate program, we took soil samples. When I say soil samples, think of a big metal tray, roughly from the podium to this other podium here, of soil on site from C43, from C44, and from the EAA site, and sent them out to Colorado State and did a number of different tests for overwash with different ground covers. I want to say AstroTurf or Turf was part of that, but I'd have to go back. It's been 20 years to double check, but we evaluated different types of cover and their performance. So we have a lot of that, and I'd have to go back and dig it out and refresh my memory.
Okay. That has been looked at. All right, thank you.
Quick question. How many acres of turf is that around the outside? Is it 300?
The embankment itself
Yeah.
Is 435,
okay,
but total throughout the whole site is just shy of 8,000.
So that's...
I'm sorry. Yeah, acres. No? Oh, that's, never mind. I'm looking at, this represents the number inclusive of the cycles, so just the 435.
Right. Okay.
I apologize.
So in thinking about the cost when we constructed it, we basically laid 435 acres of sod to build. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, John, I had a question. Have we explored the introduction of solar in order to augment our power costs?
Yeah, we have. There's, through Carolina's efforts on the resiliency side, we've had even conversations with FPL. If you've ever been around the Miami airport, Blue Lagoon, which is just south of the airport, there was actually a floating solar field there over top of that lake. And we've talked with FPL about would we be able to incorporate something like that into these reservoirs. What we've run up against to date, and those conversations are still ongoing, and where we can incorporate solar, we will. What we've run into to date is the amount of power that is needed. Just the extent of a floating solar field isn't sufficient to be able to supply that level of power to solely operate the pump station. You'd have to have other augmented sources, I guess I would call them.
And that's what I was thinking of, the augmentation for that. Good.
Mr. Spotswood? It's a, I had thought about that as well, but also thought about, are there any additional benefits from doing that? Shading, is there vegetation management benefits that come from that? Is there, how would that affect this reservoir, and could it create some long-term benefit for us outside of just the power generation?
Anyone else? Mr. Butler.
Just got a comment, not a question, but I want to say that John, I appreciate all the rules that you had to follow when it comes to high head dams. I appreciate the way you and your team and the Corps are executing those rules and working to ensure the safety of these dam structures. As a potential future neighbor to a high head dam.
You live by one now.
I do live I live by one now, correct. And I appreciate this. And I appreciate that there is a cost to maintaining these things, and that is, it's something we've known going into all this, but this is not the place to cut corners. And just wanted to be sure. Hopefully that continues on beyond all of us in this room. But no, I appreciate you, staff, and everything that y'all put into this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Bergeron?
The depth is, what, 35 feet?
So there's a significant amount of topography across the site. On average, it's 17 feet. At the deepest point on the western side, it's 25.
Huh. Okay, thank you.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the resolution.
Second.
I'll second it.
Thanks. Sorry. I have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Take that roll. Mr. Spotswood.
Yes.
Mr. Bergeron.
Yes.
I'm going to vote yes. Colonel Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Mr. Hurley.
Yes.
Mr. Martinez. Thank you. That passes unanimously. So we now have Mr. Mitnick sitting down.
That's right.
And Cassandra.
Back in the usual position.
Dr. Armstrong.
All right, water conditions. So if we look back over the month of February, you can see right here, it was still, again, another below average month, which would be the 4th month in a row. Well, actually, we'll even count this a little bit. So 5 months in a row that we had below average rainfall for the district itself. So how that stacks up, you saw this graphic last month. Down here, the red trace is this current dry season. This uptick there, that is this week, and the rains that South Florida experienced just this week. You can see that little bit of rain, how it affects, statistically, how it affects where we position ourselves in relation to history and all these other years prior to. But really, that amount of rain didn't do a whole lot to really move the needle, so to speak. So while it is encouraging, there's still more needed. So again, looking at the upper chain of lakes, East Lake Toho and West Lake, they continue to have their managed recession coming down to their summer pools to facilitate a gentle drawdown, so to speak, conducive to snail kite habitat and the nesting that may be occurring up there. Lake Kissimmee continues to just kind of sort of bump right along with that water coming down from the north, is maintaining its level and the amount of flows that we're sending down the river. Lake Istapoga is receding slightly. You saw this amount of rain here helped it a little bit and brought up levels, but at the same time, the regulation schedule is continuing to fall. Quick update, we're still in conversations and the Corps of Engineers is moving along that requested deviation. So they're processing it and working through that evaluation, and we're hoping to hear something from them shortly. With that, Cassandra?
So the Kissimmee River floodplain is continuing to be dry, with most of the water depth being below ground and an average depth of about a third of a foot. The current flows are 330 CFS through 65A discharge. The conditions are very similar to what we had last month, with just a little bit of a drop in the stage, and compared to last year, we are a little bit lower as well, but the flow is what dramatically changed from last year, which was 820. So in regards to what that looks like to the environment, we are well below bank full discharge, so the water is not getting into the floodplain. And navigation in the channel is a little limited, with 300 CFS being the average. But the oxygen levels within the river are well within the optimum range for aquatic life.
We're looking at how water has moved around the northern portion of the system. You can see there last month, hardly any inflows into Lake Okeechobee, very dry, hardly any inflows into the lake itself. Overall, for the water year going to the Caloosahatchee, there's been just a little bit more than 750,000 acre feet of water, of which about just shy of 70,000 acre feet originated back here in Lake Okeechobee. Over on the St. Lucie side, there has been no water moved to the estuary either from Lake Okeechobee or from the C-44 basin itself. There has been a little bit of runoff from C-23-24 going to the estuary, just shy of 190,000 acre feet, and then 117,000 acre feet out of the C-25 going in around the Fort Pierce area to the Indian River Lagoon. One thing I will tell you, for those folks that watch our website and watch our operations, the weekend rains, there was a little bit of water that made it out of the C-25 as a result of that rain event. Overall, we try to hold as much as possible up here because this is a closed system. In other words, it is not connected to the regional system back to Lake Okeechobee or all the other canal network. So the upper East Coast, C-25, 23, and 24 canals, they just live on what water falls within the basin itself. So we tried to hold a lot of water up here from that rain event. We actually moved some water from C-25 down into 24 and 23 to try to keep it within the basin itself. But there was some ongoing maintenance going on this particular structure, and water got so high that it started overtopping the stop logs that was in the structure to perform that maintenance. So we had to open the gate up a little bit to try to bring that down so it wasn't overtopping those stock logs. So if you see some flow out C-25 as that rain event, that's what it was. But for the most part, we held as much as we could up here for as long as we could. So jumping down a little bit farther south, Lake Okeechobee, you're used to seeing these projections by now, so I'll just jump to the multi-pan one to sort of show you the evolution. Last month you heard me say that we'll start doing mid-month projections. So because today's board meeting is the first week of March, we didn't have time to rerun all of these projections as of March 1st. So we ran one February 26th. And this is the difference between what you saw in February, what that projection was, the 50 percentile line in red there, and sort of the magenta fuchsia line being the 25th percentile. When you jump down to the end of February and what the projection looks like, you can see all of these lines have shifted down just a little bit, which means that fuchsia or magenta colored line is getting down below, or forecasted to get down below the water shortage management band a little bit earlier in March, just based on the climate projections for the rest of March and what we actually saw and experienced on the ground through the month of February and the lack of rainfall that it had. So with that.
So as John said, the amount of flow going into the lake has been quite small. It's only been 13,000 acre feet over the past month, but the flow out was quite substantial for a total outflow of 258,000 acre feet, and the most of that was actually evapotranspiration. And so you can also see on the graph over here, we had quite a lot of flow going to the EAA for water supply. But over the last several days with the nice rainfall that we had, we were able to reduce those flows down. Lake levels are coming down, and we are fairly low, but we are very similar to where we were in 2011. And as you can see from this graph, we have been lower. So 2007, we were quite a bit lower, and that was a very significant drought year for us. So what that has done is created a very dry marsh, and that is providing foraging for wading birds. And they are using this as a regional refuge right now. It's got some pretty good foraging habitat, although the edges of the marsh are starting to dry down and we're starting to lose those foraging areas. This is really early in the season for the birds, so nesting activity that would normally happen a little later is probably not gonna happen. And we did go out and take a look at the bird population on February 24th. We found quite a few birds out there in a number of flocks. There's 14 flocks with I think it's 24,000 birds. And you can see that we are still quite a bit high for this area. Again, this is a refuge for this area right now. We did expand out that blue area to uncover a 10-year window instead of a 5-year window, which is what I presented last month. But you can still see that we are fairly well above that. I was also recently informed that February is a challenging month for these types of surveys due to various storms that come through that limit our ability to do surveys. So this drop that we see in February may not be a drop in birds, it's a drop in our survey capability. So take that with a grain of salt. Water quality on the lake is actually fairly good right now. The chlorophyll levels throughout the lake are fairly low, although the nearshore area has seen a recent increase. But what we are seeing because of that is that the algae that is out there, as well as the SAV, has been able to keep the dissolved inorganic nitrogen very low, especially in the nearshore area. All of the phytoplankton are in the nearshore area are taking up all of the nutrients. And so what this is doing is setting us up for a fairly mild potential come May, June timeframe for a really large bloom. There won't be the nutrients there to drive that. So that's a bit of good news for that. And then turbidity has been relatively low compared to previous times at this time of year, and that's due to pretty mild weather that we've been experiencing. So we've had this persistent bloom in the southern and western ends of the lake, but the cold front did a number on that and pretty much cleared out the lake. We are starting to see a little bit of it pop back up with the calmer weathers that we've had recently. But from a microcystin perspective, we have had a few hits in the southern part of the lake, but all of those hits have been well below the 8 micrograms per liter threshold for recreation. And also some news about the SAV. They did a quick survey out there in February. In the Indian Prairie, they saw some nice Vallisneria. They were expecting this for this time of year. Some of these plants have actually started to bloom and seed out, which is good. And then the area is also expanding. What was not expected was a healthy Chara bed in the south end of the area. Normally in the winter, the Chara starts to senesce, and we were expecting to find smaller beds, but we found nice, healthy beds throughout the southern region. So that also is helping to decrease the DIN that's in the lake right now. Moving over to the St. Lucie Estuary, as John mentioned, we did get a nice little rain event, and that's what you're seeing right here, that nice little pop. And it got us up to 246 CFS going into the estuary over the past week, most of that coming from the tidal basin. The salinity regime throughout the estuary is pretty much what it looked like last month, with the salinities being fairly high up past the US 1 bridge and going into the 2 forks. And for oyster health, the salinities are in the upper stress range and have been for quite a while at the US 1 bridge. Going over to the Caloosahatchee, we've had pretty stable flow since December. We had 211 CFS over the past week coming from the lake for a total of 432 CFS going into the estuary. And again, the salinity gradients are pretty similar from last month. The 2 gradients here you can see are pretty similar. And for the lower estuary, the oyster health, Cape Coral is actually in the optimum range, and that little dip down here that you see, that is actually part of a little rain event that we had. And then the even further down the estuary on Shell Point and Sanibel, we are in the upper stress range for oysters. Looking at the upper portion of the estuary, you can see that salinities are ranging from around 5 to up to about 17. This is for Fort Myers is in the damaging range for Vallisneria, and we have been since December. However, it is in the optimum range in the other 2 areas, Val I-75 and S-79 area. And also I wanted to draw your attention to the MFL, which is 457. As you can see, we have been bouncing around just below it since end of November. And also the Loxahatchee, the Northwest Fork, we monitor that for the MFL conditions as well. There are 2 conditions that are part of the MFL. One is a 20-day 35 CFS continuous flow, and then another is a 20-day moving average of salinity of less than 2. The flow conditions have been variable, but at the moment we are not in an exceedance for that. However, the salinity criteria has been met for an exceedance.
So looking at how water is moved around the southern portion of the system, I won't talk too much about the water year, but mainly just focus on within the last month or so. You can see that for Lake Okeechobee, most of those outflows have been for water supply to C44, C43, as well as the areas south of Lake Okeechobee, inclusive of the stormwater treatment areas, and making sure that their levels are maintained for the health of that vegetation, as well as water supply to the tribal nation over here in Big Cypress. So inflows to the conservation areas have been primarily for water supply, and I'll draw your attention to this number right here, which you usually don't see that much. This is the amount of water supply that has come out of the conservation areas going to the lower East Coast. And as you can imagine, with the drier weather, that number has started ticking up. There were right about 38,000 acre feet have been delivered from the conservation areas to the lower East Coast. And that comes from a number of different locations, out of Area 2 to Broward County, right about here, as well as right about here for Miami-Dade down Miami River, as well as water moving down the South Dade conveyance system will come out of Area 3 right about there and then be moved down this way. Flows into the park have also dropped off, driven by the Tamiami Trail flow formula. As Water Conservation Area 3A continues to recede, then the flow formula will dictate the amount of flow that goes down into the park. So we're continuing to comply with the flow formula and move that water as well. For the stormwater treatment areas, you can see in comparison to last year at over 1.2 million acre feet was treated by the stormwater treatment areas so far. This water year, roughly half of that, about 86? Yes, 86. 1,000 acre feet have been moved through the stormwater treatment areas and treated and delivered to the Everglades.
So I'm going to start over here with the nutrients. All the inflow that we've gotten is mostly going to 3-4, as you can see here, and then evenly distributed through the remaining STAs. We are seeing our inflow concentrations are hovering around 100, with 5-6 being 59, excuse me. But our outflow concentrations in 1 East, 1 West, 2, and 3-4 are all well within the Q-Bell. So we're, especially for 3-4, we are at 12, which is good news. 5-6 has experienced dry out conditions, and we are still working through those issues to try to get those concentrations to come down. And we have been able to maintain water depths at stage criteria over here at our thresholds. So that is good news for the STAs at this point. So this is what the water depth map looks like currently for the STAs. You can see 1 East Central Flowway is a little bit of yellow. That's because it's offline for some leveling. We have some vegetation management activity in 1 West, where the Eastern South Flowway is offline. In 3-4, the Central Flowway is offline for vegetation rehabilitation, and you can see over in 5-6, cells 4A and 5A are starting to dry down, and that is something we will have to monitor and manage for any outflows for phosphorus. Moving down to the Everglades, again, our water depth map, as you can see, we are getting drier across the system compared to last month and compared to last year. This is not surprising given the lack of water throughout the area, and this is our percentile map. As you can see, most of the areas are in the 10th percentile of what is considered normal over the past 20 years, We do have Water Conservation Area 2A that is still in the 90th percentile, but as you can see, we are starting to dry out in the upper regions of that conservation area. So that is something I will show you in a few slides later, the details of. But I also wanted to draw your attention to the fact that we have had a wildfire in Big Cypress. This is called the National Wildfire, and it is about 50% under control at the moment. It's about 35,000 acres, and it started in February 22nd. Then the other thing is, I was just informed this morning that we have another fire about 15 miles north in Hendry County. They're calling it the Solar Field Fire, and it's about 787 acres that is currently burning. So to get into the stages for the various water conservation areas, starting at the top with Water Conservation Area 1 at Site 9, we have a nice steady decline of the water depth through there. We are now in the bottom 10th of where it would be considered normal for this area. We have a depth of 1.3 feet and a recession of 0.04 feet per week. For Water Conservation Area 2 in the upper gauge at the F4 gauge, we are, as you can see, declining nicely with a recession of 0.11 feet per week. So we have a depth of 0.7 feet, and we are now in the upper 75th percentile. For the bottom part of 2A, which is fairly wet, you can see that we still have had a nice decline, a recession of 0.09 feet per week, and an average depth of 1.6, and we are now in the in the 90th percentile. For 3A, the 63 site, we are well below the minimum target that we have set for SEP ops, and we are also missing the thresholds that we would have normally liked to see for the Alley North colony for IBIS. We missed the threshold back in I think that was October, and we're going to be missing the current one for March. For 3A, also same situation. We are well below the minimum that we would like to see as part of our proposal for SEP ops, and we're missing that box for the wood storks. And this is a picture of what the situation looks like out there as of February 9th. As you can see, it's fairly dry. For Site 65, which is normally fairly wet, we are well below the historic average, but that's okay. We are above the annual minimum that we would like to see out there. So for the conditions for the birds, we are looking at a fairly poor season for wading bird recruitment and also for ridge and slough recovery. Moving down to Florida Bay. We are below ground with the Taylor Slough Bridge, which you can see in this box right here. It's the red line is the current stage, and it is well below ground. So there's very little water that's coming out of there, going out into the Florida Bay, and we are seeing some rise in our salinities. They are mostly in the upper 75th percentile or slightly higher. And for the western portion of the bay, we've actually hit the threshold for hypersalinity. Although if you look back historically, that is not necessarily uncommon. This is what happens out there on the western bay. So I did want to give you some context of what the Taylor Slough Bridge looks like. This was a picture taken back in mid-February, and you can see there's very little water running through that area at all. And again, for the MFLs, we did have an MFL last year, and we are currently, this is our current salinity. We are not there yet, but we are seeing a rise in salinity as part of tracking for that. The salinities are based off of flows that come through there, and unfortunately we have not been able to track the total flow due to some loss of USGS gauges. But at the time that we lost that data, we were quite low in the creek flows coming out there. So if we have another flow, that will be 2 flows with 2 MFLs within 2 years, but our time frame is 10 years. So we will not be in violation if we do have another exceedance this year.
So you heard a fair amount of this already from Cassandra, but for Area 1, it's below its schedule and it's continuing to recede down. Area 2, we are making deliveries out of Area 2 to Service Area 2 or Broward County over here. And then Area 3 is below its floor elevation, sort of this tan line across the bottom. So we are making deliveries into Area 3 to offset any water that is leaving Area 3 going to Miami-Dade County and down the South Dade conveyance system. You saw this last month. I started including some of these forecasts that are in our overall projections that we do that is available on our website, but I don't typically include them for the governing board presentation. But this one is for Conservation Area 2, the S11B headwater side of that structure, and what that forecast looks like given the anticipated conditions as we move forward in time. Similar type thing for down in Area 3. This is the average of the 3 gauges that Cassandra had talked about, but it is really the 6.9W gauge that we use to track the floor elevation for the conservation areas, which triggers the offset of inflows versus outflows whenever we take water out of the conservation area, with the exception of the flow formula. Then that has got to be preceded by an equal volume of water to the north. So that is the operations that we're currently employing. We're currently taking out about 150 cubic feet per second out of Area 3A, right there around the Miami River where it runs out by US 27 down to Miami-Dade County. Some of that water is moving south down the South Dade conveyance system to prop up the well fields in the southern portion for Florida Keys Aqueduct Authority, and some of that is continuing down the Miami River. Groundwater conditions. Mr. Bartlett had talked in his executive director's comments earlier this morning about the water shortage warnings and orders and the approach that we're taking. So staff is continuing to meet. We just had a meeting yesterday actually with some of the utilities over on the West Coast and Lower West Coast to talk about what data that they are seeing, what data we are seeing, and talking about what is that telling us that could lead to potential future management actions as we have that conversation and system conditions continue to evolve. So staff is continuing to monitor all those groundwater levels. You can see roughly 60% of the stations are still continuing to record decreasing levels throughout the district. We're having similar type meetings with utilities over here on the lower East Coast. So that will be something that staff stays on top of in the coming days and weeks. You heard a comment earlier that Florida still continues to remain in drought or extreme drought conditions, particularly there that swath through the center of the state extending down to the lower West Coast. As far as what the Climate Prediction Center is saying, we're still looking for that sort of break in the April timeframe and that change in that forecasted change. But right now we're in this window, March to May, which has the equal chances, hoping to see that break in April where it starts leaning to above normal rainfall. And then as you progress into the wet season, then that trend continues. For the foreseeable future anyway, probably some rain throughout the district this weekend on Saturday, and then it gets back to maybe a little bit more of a drying trend, with the week 2 being highly uncertain as to what it may hold or what it may call for. Look ahead really hasn't changed all that much since last month. We're still waiting. All the seasonal models are continuing to project out a break or a change in the weather there in April, so that's what we're looking forward to and hoping it materializes and we get a little bit more rain, a little bit more wet weather as we run into the wet season. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you both. Any questions, comments? I've got one for Dr. Armstrong, and this may not be your area, but with the lake as low as it is now, we talked last month about the starting to do vegetation management. Is that, are we moving forward with that?
Yes, sir. We've got some plans for some planting throughout the lake. There's a team of folks that are working on a wide variety of things that we can do when the lake levels are low. Planting is one of them. I'm not sure the timeline for that, but I think it's fairly soon that we'll be planting.
We're doing some burning also.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bergeron?
Yeah, it's a very good time on the lake to do controlled burning, and there's certain benefits to the lake being lower, to let it dry up and cleanse the wetland, but it does affect the balance of water supply at the same time. It's very sensitive balance. I know I've talked to you about this many times, John, but I'm still concerned about the water levels in 2A and 2B being 1.5 feet above schedule, and then 3A north and 3A south 1.5 feet below. There was some discussions earlier about how that's affecting 3A. I know we have to balance water supply with the environment, and I'm hoping when the EAA reservoir is available that we can let this water flow, and when we have dry times or wet times, unrestricted, decompartmentalized, that oozing river of grass. But I am concerned about the high water in 2A and 2B being 1.5 feet higher than the schedule, and 3A and north and 3A south 1.5 feet below. So when can we get to the point that we can equalize these water levels and let the oozing river of grass make its way to Florida Bay without cumulative backups in 2A and 2B, and let this water flow?
So, because you're a friend and the most persistent man that I know,
Okay.
And I knew you'd have this question. I figured I'd include these next two slides in today's backup. So it's not all pretty. I didn't give it to Jill to make it look good, just in case this question came up. But so last month you heard me talk about the proposed schedule that is being considered in SEP 1.0 for Area 2A. And granted, that process still has to play out. There's a lot of things that can still change. For those folks that are interested in the regulation schedule, I encourage you to pay attention to that process. But as it stands right now, this is what a new schedule for Area 2 is being considered as a revision under SEP 1.0. So you can see there's a lot more zones throughout the schedule, and there are different requirements in each one of these zones. So right now, this is the trace of where Area 2A is in comparison to what a potential future schedule may look like, seeing how that process plays out. So if this were to be put in place, then you see how it is below its schedule. The top zone up here being the A1 zone, it's slightly below that schedule. You saw in Cassandra's presentation, I'll jump back a bunch. Here, that the northern portion of 2A is actually drying down and is below ground level, whereas the southern portion is the one that has the deeper water. It's in the 90th percentile. So if I fast forward and take a look back at last year, so this graph is on our website. Anybody can go take a look at it. I know it's really hard to read, really small, but essentially this is water levels in 2A throughout the past 2 years. So if I go back to right about here, March of 2025, you can see where Area 2A was. In comparison to where it is today, today is about 0.3 foot, a little bit higher than it was last year in March. But what I want to point out is this departure right here, going through March and then April till we get to May 1st, and see how low the conservation area is. So in that 2-month time frame, you can see there's not a whole lot of rain up here in March and April. Down here at the bottom, this is just water supply deliveries coming out, going to Broward County. There are no releases from the S11s moving water from Area 2 into Area 3, but the significant drop in the levels in Area 2, the marsh dropped about a foot just from the lack of rainfall, whereas the headwater at 11B dropped about 2 feet. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking at as we sit here right now in March. I've talked a couple times about that break that we're looking to see in April, hoping that that materializes, and this coming April is very different than last April in 2025, and there wasn't any rain in April of 2025. So that's what we're looking at as we look out into the future, and why that water is still sitting up there. It's still in a good place for the ecology of Area 2. Cassandra can speak a little bit better to that. I know it's a little bit deeper there in the southern end in that 90th percentile, but this is the overall picture that we're evaluating as we look out in time and how to best manage that water resource.
Okay. Well, I'll give you my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in that area for 7 years. Went home every night in an airboat. And back in the 1960s, when I was living out there was thousands of wildlife, fur-bearing animals, the whole food chain. The water levels that once you get over 2 to 2.5 feet of water, you know, I look at the balance of the whole food chain. The water levels that we have out there now, there's not one Deer Island, which are Indian mounds that were built 10,000 years ago by the Glades One Indians. There's not any refuge for fur-bearing animals. You go back to 1982 in the Mercy Kill, thousands of fur-bearing animals floating everywhere. And we had these kind of water levels that drowned the food chain. I don't take preference whether it's birds, fur-bearing animals. I look at the whole balance of the food chain. And if we continue to keep water above the schedule we have now, you will not have any wildlife. I've always used an example that a wading bird ain't got a 3-foot leg. Now, I drive sawgrass and I-75 every day, and I don't see any birds in 2A or 2B until water levels are below the schedule we have now. So if we're talking about changing a schedule for higher water, you're not restoring the Everglades. I have a lot of history in that area. Mm-hmm. Not trying to be combative, but the only time I see birds in there is when water levels are below that schedule. And then they're all over the place. And it just seems so unnatural. You would be 1.5 feet higher in 2A and B and 1.5 feet lower in 3A. That is extremely unnatural. These water levels, you may have a constraint because you're trying to balance water supply, and we have to do that. There's no doubt. We have a responsibility to flood protection. We have a responsibility to water supply, but when the reservoirs are built north, and you have all that water that's flowing east and west out the Caloosahatchee, the St. Lucie, the Indian River Lagoon, greater than natural, stored to be able to have water move south when we're in a compatible with the Central Everglades and Everglades National Park, Big Cypress and Fakahatchee and Picayune. We shouldn't be using 2A and 2B as a reservoir. we shouldn't have levels in there. Now, 100-year acts of God for 90 days, that's a natural, and the weak die and the strong survive. But I can tell you that the water levels in there now, you won't see hardly any birds because their legs aren't long enough to get to the bottom, wading birds. So I know I sound like a broken record. We may have a little disagreement, but that's okay. But these water levels are not compatible with the balance of the food chain in that area. And I know you have a responsibility to water supply, but there's got to become a point that this water doesn't, we shut off that oozing water flowing south, natural, for the benefit of the global system. So I hope we can get there, but I've always been concerned about that. And as we move forward with restoration, I think it's important that you decompartmentalize 2A and 2B and route water into the North New River, whatever is compatible going to the ocean side, and the other goes right back and moves south through 3A. Then the ridge and sloughs will stay formed across 2A and 2B. We're kind of cutting it off by transitioning through the S11s, and you're going to lose the ridge and sloughs in 2A. And we can route that water to save 2A, 2B, 3A North, 3A South, and stop these cumulative backups that are 1.5 foot difference. That's so abnormal, it's just not normal. As we go forward with Everglades restoration, we have to let this water move the oozing river of grass till it gets to Florida Bay. Try to model the most natural flow. For some reason, everyone wants to shut gates and back this up, shut these gates, open those gates. At some point in time, when the Tamiami Trail's done, this water needs to continue to move. And then we have the relief valve with the EAA to make sure we have water supply too. But I apologize for talking so much about this, but if you're talking about raising water levels higher than what we have now, you'll severely impact God's landscaping, and you'll severely affect what wildlife's in there. All the islands will be underwater, and so I hope we keep that in mind, and I'd like to see us start moving some of that water. In your presentation, you said 3A and South and North is being impacted to the birds. Am I correct on that?
Correct. Area 2A is and Cassandra, make sure I get this correct.
So why would you hold
2A
this
is the
water
last
back?
refuge for foraging for the colony that sits right over here in 2A. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the area where we're starting to see the gradient of the dry down, the birds are using those different bands for foraging, and there's actually a lot of activity in there right now. So yeah, the bottom of it where it is too deep, they're not there. But where it's starting to dry out in the upper portion of the area, they are using that as a refuge.
So if you're 1.5 foot higher in 2A and 2B and 1.5 foot lower than scheduled in 3A, why wouldn't we move water? What would?
So why wouldn't we move water?
Why wouldn't you let water equalize through the system?
So if you let water equalize through the system, which, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I very much appreciate and value your insights and your experiences over your lifetime. And you've been around long enough to see the construction of the East Coast Protection Levee, how water used to come down through 2A, make a little button hook right here through Broward County, and then come back this way. I mean, you've witnessed that on the ground. Now it does stack up there in 2A, and is not allowed to get through Broward County anymore because it's been segregated, it's been cut off. Moving a lot of that water right now over into 3 is going to essentially disappear down into the groundwater table. It's not going to elevate surface waters in the northern portions of 3A right now. It will seep down into the ground, and you'll further accelerate that drying front that Cassandra is talking about, that the birds are using right now in the central to northern portions of 2A, that they're relying on for their feeding grounds.
In 2A?
Yes, sir.
I don't hardly see any bird in 2A with these water levels. I mean, I'm out there every week. It just, we're not following the schedule that we have. And if you're talking about a higher water, you won't have one living species.
Yeah, I absolutely encourage everybody to get involved in that SEP 1.0 process and weigh in on the development of that future schedule.
If you take the water levels in 1982 and 1994 that stayed out there for 2 years and drowned 95% of every fur-bearing animal across 750,000 acres, that's the water level we're at right now. And I just hope we can let water move south and not trap it in 2A and 2B 1.5 feet above schedule in the dry season. That may be necessary for water supply, but it would seem like when the EAA is built, you got all this water that was going out the rivers that you don't have to worry about having water supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Once the 3 big reservoirs are online.
But
it's a
I'm
game
really
changer.
concerned, and I know we have a little difference of opinion, but I haven't seen anything in regards to raising compatible water levels with God's landscaping and all its wildlife. Is there something going around that I haven't seen, or
Sorry.
do you have another schedule you're talking about that would have water at these levels that we're at now?
The only schedules under SEP 1.0 that they are evaluating is for Area 2A and Area 3A.
Okay, so is 2A and 2B gonna have a higher water level than 3A and south and north?
When you say higher, just from the sheer topography and land surface elevation, yes, it is higher. But a regulation schedule will dictate how to move that water to make those levels more compatible with the ecology of Area 2A or Area 3A. Area 2B does not have a regulation schedule. There is no real outlet out of Area 2B.
Well, we need one. That's for sure. I mean, my point is that water, as you flow south from the Broward Palm Beach line across this whole area, your topographical elevations keep dropping. Okay, your sloughs are 6 inches lower than your sawgrass ridges, and then you get into your Deer Islands, which is their highest water level. There's no way we can ever not let this water on a plain move south naturally. Can't have 2A and 2B 1.5 feet higher than 3A and 3, south and north. It's got to flow on a plane. It can't
Understood.
be just.
And that's what
otherwise, it's a reservoir. It's not.
Understood, and that's what that plan is evaluating. So again, I encourage everybody to participate in that process.
Well, I would like to be in
Absolutely.
that process with you, and I'm not trying to be combative, but I see The water levels you have in that area right now are the same water levels in 1982 and 1994 that just annihilated the wildlife. So I look forward to working with you on that, and don't take nothing personal.
Never is, sir.
I've been in that swamp for, I hate to say, but nearly 80 years, and I've seen a lot, and I hope I can be a positive impact with our team to let this water flow, and it's an exciting times. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Thank you, Ms. Bendick. Dr. Armstrong. Mr. Bartlett mentioned earlier that we were going to have a presentation from the Corps, and Major Bell is here to talk about the initiative. If you'd like, Major Bell, the floor is yours. Talk about the building infrastructure.
I appreciate it, Chairman Goss and governing board members. So on February 23rd, 2026, the Office of the Army of Civil Works, under the leadership of Assistant Secretary of Army for the Civil Works, Mr. Adam Tell, launched a new initiative called Building Infrastructure, Not Paperwork. This is a transformative effort designed to modernize USACE and the Civil Works program and to maximize our ability to deliver national infrastructure for the nation. By strategically prioritizing resources towards high-impact water resource projects, cutting through the bureaucracy and the red tape, accelerating project delivery, reducing unnecessary regulations, we aim to complete critical projects faster and more cost-effective. The initiative also strengthens the transparency, accountability, and empowers the district commanders to make informed decisions while providing American public, our nation, partners, industry, and stakeholders, and elected leaders a clear vision and view of how delivery will be done and how this will impact our national security. The 5 points of this initiative is maximizing the ability to deliver the national infrastructure, cutting the red tape, focusing on efficiencies, transparency and accountability, and prioritization of projects. That's all I have for you today. Any of your questions?
Well, thanks very much. I know we certainly welcome this as one of your partners. And we've been, I think, a poster child for part of it. And moving forward, Mr. Bartlett, do you have anything you want to say?
No, I just appreciate Major Bell for being here, and and really he's been very much a partner as we've been navigating all the challenges we have with trying to make sure we meet all the rules and regulations, and so he's really helped us navigate it to now, and as a result, the Corps has learned opportunities where they could learn from what we've been able to accomplish in South Florida and build that across the nation.
Right. Any other governing board member have anything to say? Colonel Roman.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, Major Bell, and this is exciting news, and I know Secretary Tell was having a conversation with some of us out at the Picayune Strand, and he was very excited about this initiative, and so are we. I have a question on whether or not you will approach this by taking a survey of our projects with Mr. Bartlett and identifying those besides the EAA reservoir that we can accelerate together and move forward at a faster clip. How is this going to translate on the ground?
So we're still working through the process. So the policy letters were drafted by the ASA's office, sent over to the headquarters Corps of Engineers, and Lieutenant General Graham, the Chief of Engineers, has released those implementation guidance down. So we're reviewing that right now through the staff level, and then providing that back up through the chain of command, and then we'll see how that's all going to work out. It's going to be a process, but I think overall it's going to be an exciting time for the nation, and specifically for South Florida Water Management District and the state of Florida to be able to move those projects, critical projects, forward and get restoration on a more completed path faster, I guess.
Do you have an anticipated timeline for when you will have your process in place?
So I do not. I can tell you from the implementation guidance from under 1043B and those things, I think in the next couple of weeks we'll have some exciting news to bring to not only the state of Florida but to the governing board as well on the projects that we were asked to accelerate. So we're nearly complete with those actions, and we'll present that shortly for folks, and I think it'll be happy for those individuals that have been involved in that, especially for our team that working really long hours to get this critical MOA completed on time, and as we were ordered to do. So.
Okay, great. I'll look forward to seeing what we can move forward. I know we've got the EAA where we shaved off 5 years, so I'm looking forward to those other projects that maybe we can do the same. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Major Bell. Appreciate you being here. We'll move to the monthly financial report. Ms. Heater.
Good morning. So I have two items to brief you on. First, the monthly financial report. Monthly financial report is through January 31st, 2026. That's in the packet. We've collected total revenue of $628 million, expended $376 million. So from the last report, we collected an additional $63 million, and we spent $113 million between December and January. So a little bit of a difference in the revenue collected, 63 and 113 million expended, but that is, okay because we collected so much of our ad valorem, which is covering many of those expenses. The $628 million of revenue is made up of, for this month, January, $268 million from intergovernmental, $338 million or 83% for ad valorem, and the remaining $20 million is through invested funds, license permits, fees, and leases. The expenditures, the $376.4 million, about $18 million or 5% is within your science area and programmatic structure, $8.7 million or 2% regulatory, $328 million or 87% from Everglades and O&M, the largest, and then $20.9 million or 6% administration and outreach. We're 68% obligated as well, so we're tracking fairly well. The last item, which goes with this morning, and what Mr. Bartlett presented to you as a stat that I will also repeat in my report, is the asset management and the assets that were sold or surplused. So, Chapter 274, Florida statute authorizes the South Florida Water Management District to dispose of obsolete tangible personal property as surplus. The governing board delegated its authority under this chapter to the executive director of the district's Section 101-44-5C of the district's policies. The executive director further designated this authority to the Director of Administrative Services. Section 274-07 Florida statute requires that the district record in its minutes the tangible personal property disposed of under Chapter 274. A list of tangible personal property declared as surplus is described as a separate document in the meeting packet under agenda item number 28. A hard copy of this document is also available upon request. For fiscal year 25, staff removed 689 fixed assets with a net book value of $463,419 from the district's fixed asset records. By staff taking the opportunity to surplus some of the fixed assets that were in good enough condition to sell, they generated $1,237,040 in sale proceeds for these assets, resulting in a net gain of $773,621. The net gain represents 0.93% of the total net book value of $83,499,644 of the district's tangible personal property as of December 30th, 2025. So it was very timely, and that we recognize the team that does do such a good job, and that I'm able to report such good stats for the report.
Girl.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Heater, and thank you for the job that your team is doing in this regard. I mean, that's just incredible. I had a couple of questions lately from members of the community about how to take advantage of one of our sales, I guess. Could you just briefly tell us how that works and how they can plug in if they're looking for something?
Yes, so they can plug into Gov Deals. And that is where they can see the different assets that we are selling.
Is there one sale or is it ongoing?
It's ongoing, and it depends on how much we have actually to surplus.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
anyone else have any questions or comments for Ms. Heater? Thanks, Katie.
I do have something, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Bartlett.
This is where I thought you were going. So while we've been sitting here today, our certificates of participation, the refinancing of our debt, has been out on the street getting bid out. And so that did close, and Bank of America won at 2.66%, which is like 12 basis points less than what we were expecting. So,
Wow.
Yeah, so we got a good deal, and we'll get the final numbers to you about how much we'll be saving.
Well done. Thank you all.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
We'll go now to a final general public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll hear from Jake Foytik.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Governing Board. Jake Foytik, Assistant Director of Government and Community Affairs for the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. Farm Bureau is the state's largest general ag organization. We represent and advocate on behalf of farmers, large and small, all throughout the state of Florida. And they are thankful for the rain that we received this past week. Very thankful. Unfortunately, as we saw, that rain did little, didn't result in much significant change in South Florida. So it's so important right now that we prioritize water supply. Specifically now when we're making these critical management decisions in the coming weeks and months. Outside of that, thank you guys. Thanks you and your staff for the SFER open house. What a great opportunity. I look forward to that every year. I learn so much. It's such a great opportunity to interact with staff and network and learn new things. So we're really appreciative of that. And thanks for a good meeting. That's all I have today. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Foytik. Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised on Zoom and no additional cards.
Great. Thanks, Jake. We'll go to board comment, and I'll start with Mr. Early.
Just thank you, Cassandra and John, for some great work in difficult circumstances, and we'll look forward to continue to get the updates on how we're taking advantage of the opportunities with the lake being so low and some of those projects. I'm not sure how much time we have left. It's a blessing and a curse, I guess. I guess we don't want to have much time left if we can start to see some rain, but I'd love to hear more detail about what kind of progress we are making while the lake's really low. But other than that,
Can I jump in, Mr.?
Of course, Mr. Bartlett.
So one of the things I wanted to mention was that we've been working so well with FWC on muck removal projects and that planned effort, building on what happened in 2007 where they did a lot of muck removal. And so we're kind of expanding that area with FWC. And they're mobilizing right now. We've got our Okeechobee Field Station knocked it out of the park to make haul roads and a disposal area and all that type of stuff. And so over, through the remainder of the dry season, they'll be removing muck. And right now it's planned to have twice as much removed than 2007. So it's a pretty big effort, and it'll be a real area that will be improved. So anyway, I'm excited about that, and I'm hoping at some point to schedule a field trip, when they're really in full gear so everyone can see what's going on.
That'd be great. Mr. Butler? Bergeron?
Nothing further.
Thanks. Mr. Bergeron?
I have a lot to say, but I'll try to make it brief, and I just want to make sure that as we continue to go forward, I have a lot of history in that area. I remember in 1954 we camped on a Indian mound that's preserved right next to the BT&T, the big hockey stadium. I'm 11 years old, and we're hiking to an island called TB Head inside of 2B, and seen my first panther. I have a lot of history in that area, and I look forward to working with John and our people at the end of the day to make sure that the water levels for 2A and 2B and 3A north and south equalize themselves with that oozing movement. You take what I said earlier, there's a 1.5 feet higher in 2A and 2B and a 1.5 feet lower in 3A. Obviously, before levees were built, that wouldn't be natural. So, and I know we have to balance water supply too. You know what I mean? And I don't say a lot about water supply, and I don't say too much about flood protection, because this district has built probably one of the greatest flood protection in the world, in the largest drainage district in the world. And so I do have concerns that we fulfill all three obligations. You mostly hear me talking about Everglades restoration, but I do understand the balance that our staff has to make as we go forward with Everglades restoration. But I will tell you that at the end of the day, we need to make sure we have water levels that are compatible with the wildlife and God's landscaping. And that's all I've been talking about here. And I look forward to working with staff that we accomplish that. And I think when the EAA is built and all the water that's going out the rivers and destroying the estuaries and seagrass from quantity greater than natural is stored and used for water supply and compatible water levels moving south, compatible with the environment, that we're in a much better place on being able to manage water levels that are compatible with the environment and also provide water supply, which is so important. So I don't want anyone to misunderstand me. I know there's a lot of balancing going on here, but I don't want to see water levels established that aren't compatible with the environment and the wildlife as we go forward. And I look forward to working with staff on that. And as always, I apologize for talking so much, but I think I repeat myself some because I know there may be new stakeholders listening or here, so they can be educated, because when you're educated, you have a voice, because you kind of know what we're up against, and what we're going to accomplish is the largest environmental restoration ever attempted in the history of the world. And I'm honored to sit with this board and the staff we have, because that's a big thing for the future of Florida. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bergeron. Mr. Spotswood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ron, it's always a pleasure to sit here and listen to the history of the Everglades, and appreciate being able to share this bench with you. Before we adjourn today, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the men and women of our armed forces who've given their lives in protection of this country. The freedoms that allow us to gather here, debate issues, and work together to solve some of our natural resource issues were all built on the foundation that they provided. As public servants, I think it's important that we do that we recognize that, and on behalf of our board, just wanted to make a comment about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Spotswood. Mr. Martinez. I'll give you a chance to jump in later if you want, but not much later. I don't have much to say, except the SFVR open house is taking place in the lobby from 1 to 3, and our next governing board meeting is April 9th at 9 o'clock. And Charlie, last chance. Going, gone. Meeting's adjourned. Thanks.